Hello?
Hi, Anna.
Hey. I was like, I can't speak.
How
I have a
are
photo
you?
up. You can see it now, right?
Yeah, I can see a photo.
Okay, perfect.
Looks good. Let me...
You got dressed up for the occasion? Any excuse?
I'm sorry?
I said you got dressed up for the occasion, any excuse to get dressed up these days, I think.
Yeah, I guess putting on a shirt is being dressed up now.
Yes.
Any kind of shirt.
Oh, if you see how I am at work during the week, you'll be like, oh, God.
Yeah. I mean, I usually just put on a dress shirt. I guess this one looks a little dressy. I don't know, because of the sleeve.
I'm literally in torn t-shirts and sweats all week.
Yeah, most of the time, me too. Just like house shorts.
Right, right. So can you hear me okay? Or is there any delay or anything like that?
Yeah, it sounds pretty clear.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Thank you for being on time.
Oh, no problem. I wanted to talk to Michael before we started, but I don't think he got my email because I didn't hear from him.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's okay. I just wanted to let him know that the first section, I think, of my presentation is probably going to be longer than the other two sections because it's just going to cover a lot more information, So, I mean, communications and policies, those are less substantive. So I think there'll be a lot less for me to talk about, and maybe Michael can speak more on those issues. But in terms of the first part where we're talking about safety and return to work issues, I think those are much more substantive and there's going to be a lot more. So yeah, if I can, sort of it'll be a little uneven. It won't be 10, 10, 10. It'll probably be, yeah. And I wanted Michael to be aware so he's not thinking like, what the hell? Like she's gone on for like 20 minutes. Like,
I don't think so. I think because he's pretty well versed and, and I think I have a good feeling he likes to just wing things and see how it goes.
okay.
So I think as long as, you kind of, both of y'all fit within that time frame, 35 minutes should be fine. Yeah, just however you feel that the conversation needs to go in that time frame, I think is.
Okay, good. Because I think the first part is definitely going to be more, I'll let Michael speak and kind of open up. And then I have a feeling it's going to be like 10 minutes of just presentation material. And then, if Michael has any back and forths, I just want to make sure I get the framework out. I'm leaving out a lot of detail, obviously, because there's a lot of stuff that can't be covered in that short time period. But I definitely want to hit the big bullet points that employers, like, they really must know. These are things that they really should think about, and it's also based on my experience counseling clients and what I'm recognizing as clients not paying attention to. So
yeah, I think that's really important when you bring those forward, and most folks would be like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Because those are the areas that I think will also get them in trouble in terms of both lawsuits and regulators. So I wanted to make sure that I hit that. Wow, Francis, I like your background.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
I want to be there.
It's Saturday, okay?
I want to be there. I like that background.
Oh, yes. Once we are done, I jump into the ocean.
Yeah. It's not really your window, right? Because I'm coming over. I'll have my mask on and everything, but I'm coming over then.
Okay. Well, you're welcome then.
All right. So I gave all of y'all co-host capabilities. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, Michael.
You're on mute.
So, I am on mute or?
Oh, Michael's on mute. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Did you want to, Anna had something to mention to you, Michael.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, I don't know if you saw my earlier email, but it's not a big thing. I think we can wing it, but I just wanted to let you know the first section, I'm probably going to be a little bit longer. when we're talking about safety, workplace issues, just because I think it's going to cover more substantive areas as versus like communications and policies, which can be shorter. But because the substantive areas will have to cover, I just think that these are certain key areas that employers must know if they want to consider return to work. So I want to lay that framework out. And so it will go, you know, like I'll let you go first and you can speak on like, the flexibility of having like a management that's fluid and things like that, your first topic. And then, you know, if you could turn it over to me, I will speak, but you know, it'll be a little longer. I don't want you sitting there like, oh my gosh, it's going on for like 12 minutes. Like, what the hell? It's like, shut up. You know? So it will be a little, I think it'll be about 10 minutes. And then if you have any follow-up questions related to that section, which I think is the most important section, that, you know, you can have that back and forth, or if you feel like just going right into the second section about communications, we can do that as well.
It's not a problem at all. What I'm wondering, Karen, are we going to see everything on screen, or do I need to have something open so I can just follow along and know where my cues are?
We won't have screen share up the whole time.
Okay, so I need to put your...
I will have something open on my side, so if I need to cue you, I will. Yeah. Since I'm not going to be on video, I'm going to be using notes on the side, just following along with Karen's outline. Mm-hmm. So if I feel like I need to cue you, I will.
Right. That's so I'm just going to have Karen's outline available on one of my side screens here.
Yeah,
that's basically what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Have a side by side with the Zoom screen with my notes. And then I'll do the screen share. But pretty much after I go through the agenda, so there's the PowerPoint that I have. After this second slide, I'll start the screen.
Okay.
So I'll just kind of do the intros. I'll go through this agenda, and then I'll stop sharing the screen, and then I'll introduce the two of you. And then I kind of just throw it over to you, Michael and Anna.
Yep.
Okay. And then Michael, when the first time either of us speak, I think if we could do like a very one sentence, like opener, like, hey, I'm Michael, from so-and-so. And I'll say, I'm Anna, I do so-and-so. I think that's always a good, I'm sure you know though. I mean, you look like you've done this like 1,000 times, so I don't feel like I don't even need to give you anything. I think we've done this enough where we're just gonna wing it. And then Karen and Francis are gonna be like, oh my God, what are they doing?
No.
Yesterday.
I have so much confidence on you guys. Come on.
What were you saying, Michael?
I said I was back to back doing video presentations on Microsoft Teams all day yesterday, all week actually. So.
Oh wow! Yeah, so you're seasoned. Cues.
I'm crispy. Not seasoned. I'm crispy.
Yeah. I hope this is the only one that you have for today.
It is.
That's good. All right, it is 10:55. Are we all okay?
Just like that.
Yeah. Yes, I will mute myself.
Okay.
Do we only have 2 people? Oh no.
So far.
Okay.
We'll start popping in. Start letting folks in. So I'll give them another minute. I'm gonna start sharing my screen, and we'll wait for Michael to come back before we do this.
Getting some light here.
Y'all you can see the full PowerPoint, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can hear me okay, right? I'm always worried about my audio.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm not going to unmute you right now. I'm going to let y'all do that on your own. During this time, I'm going to start letting people in, and I'll greet folks, and then I'll ask folks to answer the check-in question. And around 11 o'clock, I think we can get started right at 11:01. I'm going to pay attention to how many participants we have, Usually if I feel like folks are popping in late, I'll get started a little later, so like 11:02.
Okay.
But if I feel like, okay, we have maybe 25-ish, I'll start like right on time. So just kind of letting you know. Okay, we're good. See you all on the screen. Okay, I'm gonna start letting folks in. All right, we are getting started this morning. Thank you all for joining us. Hi, Sam. Thank you for joining us this morning. Hi, Elaine. Thanks for joining us this morning. It is a beautiful Saturday morning. It is the 9th. Half the time I don't know what day it is until I open my computer. So it's Saturday the 9th and it's almost 11 o'clock. And today we're going to be talking about the new norm. So for folks just joining us, you are automatically on mute. Your controls are at the top since I'm sharing the screen, but once I'm done sharing the screen, your controls are on the bottom of the screen. Your mute control and your video sharing are also on the bottom left. And if y'all can just, give us a little check-in, you have a chat box. I have a question, kind of like question today is, if you had your own island, what would you name it? I know, right? Where do I come up with these things? Sometimes I was like, if we had our own island, what would we name it? Some people are, somewhat basic. It'll just be like your name, Karen's Island. But some people are actually pretty creative. So I wanted to find out, like, well, are you the basic Karen's Island, or are you like something else, like, Kay's Village?
Hey, Karen, as you can see, I already have my island, okay?
You have your island? Yes. And
yeah, on my background, behind me.
What's the name of your island, though?
Well, I need to think about that now.
Hi, Chan. Thanks for joining us this morning. We are just giving folks a few minutes to pop in with us and check in before we get started. Today is the new norm, is our discussion on AAPA Idea Talks. And your mute controls, since I'm sharing the screen, are at the top right now. So you have your mute and your video options. When I'm done sharing the screen later on, you have those options at the bottom left. And we just have a small little check-in today, something a little fun. If you had your own island, what would you name it? Hi, Hillary. Thanks for checking in with us this morning, or thanks for popping in. Beautiful Saturday again. We're just letting folks, get acclimated, and we're having a small little check-in. So if you want to check in with us, you have that little chat box, and you can just type in what you would name your island if you had an island. So I was just saying, some folks, like to name their island just after themselves, or, a name like Karen's Island. Some folks can get a little creative. So I just kind of wanted to find out what that might be. And if y'all are feeling a little brave and bold, you can pop that in the little chat box. Oh, Francis, so you're gonna name your island Joy. That's a nice name. Elaine, thanks for checking in with us. My island would be named Paradise Hideaway. Ooh, that's nice. You always want a little hideaway, right? And paradise too, but yeah, it brings a lot of relaxation to mine. I feel like a breeze coming through in my little cottage with all the doors closed. Hi y'all, thanks for joining us. Hi Allison, thanks for checking in with us today. Beautiful Saturday morning. Michael, thanks for checking in. Yours would be called Refuge. Ooh, that's a nice one. Yes. Hi Kenny, thanks for joining us this morning. Beautiful Saturday morning once again. Today is the 9th. We have a little check-in question up at the front. And today it is, if you had your own island, what would you name it? Hi, Hillary. Thanks for checking in. Hi, Mei Chan. Thanks for coming in this morning and joining us. Hillary, mine would be happiness. Oh, everyone's feeling like joy, happy, refuge, paradise. Good vibes this morning. I love it. Hi, Iris. Thanks for popping in and joining us this morning. Today, we're going to be talking about the new norm. We have some amazing speakers with us today. And we're just giving folks maybe a minute or two to go ahead and pop in with us. Thank you all for joining. And while we're waiting, you can help me answer the little check-in question I have, which is, if you had your own island, what would you name it? So I was just curious about what our little islands would be called. And it looks like so far this community we have is very positive. Lots of happiness and joy, refuge and paradise going on. So I'm feeling the good vibes today. think Francis has, oh, I think someone just updated their virtual background. I see a beach here. That's cute. Oh, it's Elaine. So y'all can also view your grid. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, you have the option of like a speaker view or grid where it's like a Brady Bunch view, and you can basically see everyone else's screen. Sam, thanks for checking in. Eco Paradise? Oh, so we got some sustainable folks in here also. I love it. Eco-friendly, sustainable. Mine will probably be something about, yeah, being sustainable and eco-friendly. I love it. This is such a great crowd. I like it. We're up early in the morning. Everybody's happy. Everybody's seeking refuge. Folks are feeling joyful, and we're feeling like we're in paradise. It's going to be a great day. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. All right. So y'all, I want to be cognizant of the time. Thank you all so much for joining us and checking in with me. You know, I hope that we do get to name our islands soon. Actually, we're feels like we're on an island already, right? So we're naming our islands great positive things. So I'm really glad. But if y'all aren't familiar with me already, with all these idea talks, hi, I'm Karen. I am the program director at AAPA. And if y'all aren't familiar with AAPA, we are Asian American Professional Association. And so we have essentially 3 main programs. So I'll just go ahead and share our agenda of today. So welcome to all. This is me welcoming you. And intros, this is me telling you, introducing AAPA to you. So I think we have some familiar faces, some familiar names too. Thank you all for, you know, taking advantage of these amazing idea talks. You know, AAPA, we have 3 main programs, mainly a mentorship, professional development and training nonprofit. Our main one is our mentoring program, which is a year-long program with our network of mentors. And we are actually still accepting registrations. So we've extremely decreased the price of our programs because we understand folks have been financially affected by the pandemic. So our program this year is only $95. We're still accepting applicants. And it's just a great way to get connected with our network, our mentors, and to just receive that support and guidance. I know for me, if I had a mentor early on in my career, I probably would have been able to get to where I wanted to be a lot quicker. But because I had to figure a lot of things on my own, you know, fell my way to where I'm at, it took a little bit longer. So I think that's one of the most benefits of having a mentor and that guidance and support. So we have that opportunity to connect you. That's one program. And then we have our board leadership program. And that is where we're essentially creating a pipeline of leaders to sit on nonprofit boards. So if you've ever been interested in that, you know, hook up with us. We have that program. We're still taking registrations until tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow's the deadline. So I have resources at the end of our workshop today. So stick with us and I'll share those resources with you. And then we have a Toastmasters chapter, and that is to help you develop your public speaking skills, to find that voice and to, you know, utilize it. And then I'm going to go ahead and introduce, you know, our speakers. We have a speaker discussion today, you know, about the new norm, you know, lots of changes going on, lots of phases that we're going through. So we're going to talk about that change. We're going to talk about the essential and timely communication. And then we're going to talk about like execution. We have a couple amazing speakers for you today. And then we have a Q&A. So if y'all have, you know, chimed in with us before, we give you an opportunity to ask, you know, some questions to our speakers. So we'll give you some time at the end, you know, after our speakers are done, for you to pop in those questions. You have that chat box to utilize, so you can always, you know, put that question in the chat box and our speakers will answer that at the end of their conversation. And then I'll share those resources with you. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen so y'all can see each other. And again, at the top left of your screen, you have speaker view. So mainly, I will be, whoever's talking will be that main screen, you know, on your screen. And then you have your gallery view, which will put everyone at like a Brady Bunch level. That's how I kind of like to refer to it. But yes, let's get right on into it. I want to go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. We actually have Michael Chi, who is one of our amazing board members. So AAPA, we have an amazing board. Michael is one of them. And Michael is also the Director of External Communications at AECOM. So Michael's going to be sharing some great insight with us today. And then our other speaker is Anna Park, who's an attorney at Littler Mendelson. And so they are both going to have this very in-depth, organic, like loving, intimate conversation. Just kidding. They're going to get really down into the information about what's going on, what this new norm is, and what it's going to look like. So I'll go ahead and stop talking because y'all are probably tired of hearing me and you want to get to that content, meat and potatoes of this workshop. So I'll go ahead and throw it over to Michael and Anna. Please go ahead and take it away.
Anna, would you like to introduce yourself? Go first.
Oh, sure. Hi, good morning. My name is Anna Park. As Karen mentioned, I am an attorney of counsel at Littler Mendelson, and I advise on privacy and security issues and help businesses develop related policies and procedures. During COVID, I've assisted a lot of clients with, basic issues such as workplace safety, temperature checks, privacy issues, medical confidentiality issues. So I think I'll be able to bring a lot of that perspective to our discussion today, especially now that we are in stage 2, we're considering reopening the state.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. As Karen has already mentioned, my name is Michael Chi, and technically not a board member, but I am a mentor with AAPA for a long time. So no worries, Karen. I know they've been trying to get me to be a board member, so that counts. I am currently the Director of External Communications for AECOM. If any of you are not familiar with AECOM, we are the largest publicly traded company based here in Los Angeles. Our focus is infrastructure, large-scale construction. Almost anything you can imagine related to major infrastructure is stuff that our company works on. And just to give you a few examples of what that is, we are in the middle of completing the new Rams SoFi football stadium in Inglewood. We are involved with Metro in constructing a lot of the new rail lines and tunneling extensions, Purple Line, Blue Line, regional connector items. We do a lot of high-rise construction, and we're a global company. So we do this work all over Asia, all over Europe, and all over the Americas footprint. My duties involve representing the company publicly, both from a public relations standpoint as a spokesman and as a crisis issues manager, and also as an internal communicator to our employees. In the Americas, we have approximately 29,000 employees across Canada, the US, and South America. And my interface on a day-to-day basis is primarily with those employees and projects within that footprint. And that's me. So Anna, are you going to kick us off with our agenda today?
I can, unless you want to talk about from a broader stroke, the change management. I know that you've spoken quite a bit on this topic about what businesses can expect going forward. And I can certainly add color to that specific to any laws that are being passed and what employers are doing and what they must do and key considerations that they really must, I don't want to use the word must because it's such a fluid area right now, but really should consider before they reopen and before they get their full workforce back into the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about that because today's session is called The New Norm. I'll tell you personally, we're shifting. We call it the now norm. So if you want to change that E to an O, and what that means is about a month ago, we were all looking at a different way of doing business. Any of us, all of you on this call today, either have a company, work for a company, or are part of an organization that's been impacted by COVID because nobody has not been touched by the current pandemic. Small businesses have their own unique struggle, primarily financial and operational, but certainly in how you need to communicate and work with your employees. large companies, mid-sized companies, anybody with 50 employees or more, certainly having its own unique challenges as well in terms of having to pivot its employees. Our company basically in the span of about 10 working days pivoted 90% of our workforce to work from home workforce. And this is all across the country. This isn't just here in Los Angeles, where we had some of the more strict stay-at-home orders issues, but those orders rolled out all across the country. And our new norm began almost immediately in terms of cascading information, both operational and status-wise, to tens of thousands of employees in a rolling basis across the country, because each state, each county, each municipality, when this pandemic started, began to roll out their various stay-at-home orders, which are all different all across the country. And now, the reason I say we're evolving from the new norm to the now norm is because any of you who are watching the news are watching the country open in fits and starts and under different rules and guidelines and different parameters and different orders everywhere across the country. That includes the city and county of Los Angeles. We are not coordinated in how we reopen. We are not coordinated in how businesses are coming back to life. We are not coordinated in who, how, where, when we communicate with our employees. Our employees are all in different phases. They're all in different financial circumstances, as are many of you, depending on what your role is, either as a manager, a leader, or a business owner. And it's very confusing in terms of what is happening right now as we sit here, right? It's confusing for our company. So communications are evolving very fast, very quickly, right? And part of the new norm is what we say change management, which used to be somewhat of a philosophical thought for companies and applied for businesses and companies when things needed to happen or had to happen. And you had time to think about what change management would look like for your company or your organization. Change management is evolving and has taken a front row seat right now for everybody. Change management is happening whether you like it or not. And what you really have to do is figure out how to stay engaged, how to stay informed, how to stay involved, and how to quickly pivot, adapt, and communicate the rapid amount of change that is taking place, because it's literally being forced upon all of us, right? Regardless of what industry you're in, regardless of how big your company is, and regardless of what your role is. Even if you're just an employee working for an organization, you probably have questions right now about what is your organization or what is your office doing to get ready to potentially return to work or return to an office environment after having worked at home for the past 7 or 8 weeks. If you are an owner or an executive, you are wondering about when you're going to be allowed and how you're going to be allowed to reopen. So my message today, and we're going to talk a lot about this more, is change management is really fluid. It is real. It's happening right now. And being both adaptable and decisive is going to be very important in terms of what your success is going to look like moving forward. And I'm going to transfer it to Anna on that point.
Yes, thanks, Michael. So as Michael mentioned, it's going to come down to how flexible you can be as a business and how you implement your programs and manage your workplace. There are areas, this is an area where there's, as I mentioned, very little guidance, and the guidance is literally changing daily, if not weekly. And you get these guidances from both the local level, you know, LA County, LA City, and the state level. Sometimes there's a conflict, sometimes there isn't. You also get these guidances from the CDC and OSHA. There's a lot to keep in track of. So what I'm going to try to do in the first section, and it will be a little longer, I gotta warn you. So, you know, you might be looking at your watch thinking, when is she going to stop talking? But, you know, we will take questions at the end. So, you know, hopefully that'll help. But I really want to impart with you, you know, just in terms of the framework that Michael outlined, I want to give you the 6 key considerations that you must take into consideration when you are reopening or bringing your workforce back. And that those 6 key points are based on legal framework and what I personally have seen come up as issues when I've advised clients. So I think it will be very helpful. So just to, and at the end of all of this, you know, you may have questions and you may have very specific issues, but at the end of the day, I want you to keep this in mind. There's very little guidance, and you will have to use common sense and practicality and some good faith. You know, all of these laws have one intent, which is, hey, what can we do to bring everyone back in a safe way, right? So if you keep that intent and purpose of the law in mind and practice, you know, good judgment based on these, based on this good faith judgment, I think you're going to be okay from both a legal liability perspective as well as any regulatory issues. So just to give you the legal framework we're working on, I know you guys know this, but, you know, obviously we have the statewide stay-at-home order, which was passed in March. That's still in play. There's local rules. LA County and LA City. LA City's safer at home order is also still in place. You will see some differences between the state and local. That's okay. State always trumps unless there's a gap, right? So you want to, and city orders tend to be a lot more detailed. You know, they go into specifics about, hey, should you wear masks? Should you do temperature checking? Things like that. The other guidance that you should be looking at regularly are OSHA guidance for workplace safety and CDC for general health considerations. California Resilience Roadmap, you know, Governor Newsom entered us into stage 2. I think just in time for Mother's Day, to be honest with you, because he said florists can open for delivery and take away. So I think his mom may have pressured him. So, you know, I saw that on the list and I thought that's interesting. Obviously, essential businesses still are open, but some of the other retail stores that can open for pickup or delivery are bookstores, jewelry stores, again, you know, Mother's Day, toy stores, clothing, shoe stores, home furnishing stores, and sporting goods stores, and florists. Now, before anyone goes back to work, I think some of the key considerations the state implemented that you have to consider for businesses to reopen are you have to do a detailed risk assessment to implement an on-site protection plan. You have to train your employees on how to limit the spread of COVID at the workplace. We also have to implement disinfection and hygiene controls, as well as health screenings and social distancing guidelines. So we're gonna go right into that. So how do you maintain or keep a safe workplace? I say maintain because I'm sure all of your workplaces are very, very safe and have always been very safe. So how do you maintain that, and how do you elevate it so it meets the COVID requirements? So some of the considerations are, 1, employee, customer, or visitor health screenings. I know you've seen this in the news, and I know many businesses have been thinking about it, and this includes temperature checks of employees as well as customers or visitors, COVID testing, and there are 2 types, and I'll go into these a little bit more in detail, symptoms questionnaires, which I personally think is the best method, as well as you know, and there are 2 considerations when you're talking about these 3 health screenings, and that's privacy and confidentiality, which is very important. You know, those rules have not been relaxed just because we're in COVID, and the EEOC has repeatedly said so. And you also have to check local guidance to see whether some of these are requirements. For example, face coverings are requirements in LA County and LA City for essential businesses, and temperature checks are requirements in certain counties like Fresno and San Mateo and Sonoma counties. Those are requirements, while they are recommendations in other counties. So far, LA County and LA City, there's no temperature checking requirement, although LA County has a symptoms questionnaire requirement for essential businesses. So what do all these mean? So temperature checks on employees, you know what these are. It's non-contact thermal scanning to check to see if the employee's temperature is above 100.4, which is the CDC guidelines. What are some issues related to that? Employee privacy. ADA and FEHA medical confidentiality rules still apply. You have to be very careful that, you know, just because there are temperature check results, you know, that doesn't mean they're not medical information. It is medical information. You have to keep it confidential. What about, you know, employees standing in line, and, you know, you have an untrained employee who's taking temperatures and they've just blurted out like, oh, wow, you have a high temperature, man, you got to go home. That's not okay. That's, again, medical information is private information. So therefore you have to do the best you can when you're conducting these checks to maintain the employee's privacy. How do you do it? It's going to come down to business and how your actual physical space and what type of employee population you have. The laws do not give you guidance on that point. Customers, I raised this only because not too many businesses have done it. Some businesses are considering it, but I do have to mention that recently we have seen workplace violence related to employees being shot because they're trying to enforce COVID rules. This happened in Flint, Michigan, where a security guard was shot. This happened at a McDonald's in Oklahoma, where 3 employees were shot. Because they were just trying to implement rules. So you have to take those issues into consideration when you're thinking about having COVID-related enforcement against customers. Visitors, one thing you have to keep in mind are vendors. These are delivery people who are coming to your workplace. Make sure whatever you decide to implement, you have to give them notice to say, hey, when you come onto our premises, you're going to be subject to temperature checks, or you're going to be subject to screenings. So that's going to be an important consideration. COVID testing. There's 2 types. There's a swab testing, which is EEOC allowed. You can do COVID testing to check for the presence of the virus. The EEOC last week said that you can do this. Antibody testing is not, because it doesn't check for the presence of the virus. It checks to see whether you have antibodies to the virus. So it does not meet the EEOC standards, and we don't think it will. I mean, who knows? Maybe the EEOC will come up with something on Monday and I'll be like, oh, well, I guess that lasted 2 days. But, so far it's antibody testing is not allowed, but swab tests are. Problem is you have much more, issues. You have many more confidentiality issues when you're actually dealing with an invasive type testing on your employees. Certainly your customers won't agree to it, so I won't even go into the customer line. Symptoms questionnaires. I think this is probably the most cost-effective and efficient, because temperature checks they've repeatedly said high temperatures don't necessarily indicate that someone has COVID, right? And they're costly. But what is simple is actually to have a health screening questionnaire. The EEOC has said, hey, you can ask these questions now. We're in a pandemic and we need to screen people, so you can ask these questions. So they've actually said you can ask health questions related to diagnosis, symptoms, testing, all of these. So of the actual employee or the individual. Don't ask it about families, because that raises other issues. But I think that's the most cost-effective one, because you can just have a set of questions that you can give out to your employees, and that will tell you, hey, this person has been exposed, this person has been traveling. As I mentioned, all of this information is medical information, so they must be kept confidential and private. Second consideration, masks and other personal protective equipment. Face coverings are required in both LA and LA City for all essential workers. So, how you want to go about distributing those, or how you want to go about requiring those from your employees, will be a consideration. Cleaning, disinfecting, and hygiene. Every company is going to have to institute regular housekeeping practices that will require either employees to personally clean their workstation at the end of the day with Clorox wipes, if you can find them. Maybe you can bootleg them, I don't know. Or Lysol sprays. Again, I don't know where, the availability of these, but, and then general office or workstation cleanings at the end of the day. You also have to implement some type of a notice or sign that implements personal hygiene, reminding people to wash their hands every 30 minutes, reminding people, hey, we have a 60% or higher alcohol content sanitizer at every workstation. You use them frequently. Cover your mouth when you're coughing or sneezing. I know these seem like common sense items, but that's, from an employer and liability perspective, you should have a sign that lays out what is something that all of us have learned since kindergarten, right? Fourth consideration is social distancing. How you're going to do this is going to be difficult, because you will have physical limitations. For example, if you're in an office building, well, what are you going to do about elevators, right? What are you going to do about people gathering at the lobby? Will it be up to the building, or will it be up to you, right? So I think those are very tricky considerations that that you have to start thinking about now before you bring anyone back. Some other elements that are more administrative are public transportation considerations, teleworking options. What if you have a receptionist that can't telework? How are you bringing them back, right? There's also staggered shifts and start times that people are considering, as well as the general options for limiting the number of people that you have in the offices. Finally, I said 6, but I think this is 5. I miscounted. Clearly, I'm not an accountant or anything related to math. So the final consideration is reasonable accommodations for high-risk individuals. This is an ADA accommodation issue. So certainly you should, speak to me more in detail if you have a question on this, because this has to follow the ADA requirements, which the EEOC has emphatically said from the beginning, still in play, does not change. And how this, and you may be feeling as an employer, hey, you know what? Anyone who's high risk, we don't want to bring them back to the workplace. So we're just going to tell them to stay home. Is this okay? No, it's not, because that's discrimination based on a protected characteristic. So even if it's for the employee's benefit, you can't do it. Can you ask people like, hey, if you need reasonable accommodation, please come and talk to us and go through that interactive process? Yes, you can do that. That is something you can do. And that is the process that I would recommend for accommodating anyone who is in the high risk categories. There are other accommodations that you can make. And I do, and those are things that are going to be very specific to your business that you should go through on a fact-by-fact basis, and certainly reach out to attorneys like me to help you get through those. Michael, back to you. See, that was a little long, but I hope that was worth it.
Important. So Anna, I want to ask you a question based on what you just covered, because I see something evolving right now that applies to small businesses and is very illustrative of the rapid change and what is going on in society. And that is, so the question for you is, based on your knowledge, are there any certifications at a state, local, or municipal level that certify a business is completely disinfected and completely safe and therefore eligible to open and operate? Do you know of any certifications like that?
There is a checklist requirement under the Resilience Roadmap California Reopening that you will have to communicate to your customers and to your employees. I'm not sure if it needs to be like posted on the window of your business or something like that. I don't think that's conducive to many businesses, but there is a requirement that you have to have a checklist, and the checklist goes through some of most of the items that I mentioned today. My list, I think, is a little bit more detailed and comprehensive. I don't think the state's requirements are bad, but it's basically what I mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, which was you have to have said, you have to affirm that you have performed a detailed risk assessment and implemented your workplace specific protection plan. You have to show that you've trained your employees on how to, either temperature check themselves or how, have a temperature screening or health screening process, or whatever you've trained your employees to do to prevent the spread of COVID. And you also have to implement individual control measures and screenings. And that could be like the hygiene notice, wash your hands so often. That could be the health symptoms questionnaire. That could be the temperature checks. It could be a number of these things. The state doesn't give you detailed guidance, but it gives you a general guidance. And you should also have disinfection protocols. And that's the cleaning steps that I talked about. And then also the physical distancing guidelines, which is the social distancing guidelines that I talked about.
So great, because I have a reason for asking that question, and this is for any of you on the phone who have small businesses or work for small businesses. I put this under the category of creative marketing. So there are small businesses posting stickers or placards or letters in their windows from local pest control companies saying they are certified 100% disinfected, and therefore their employees are not wearing masks and not wearing gloves as they begin to reopen and service customers. And the reason this is happening is because small businesses, as we all know, are struggling, and they're anxious to get back into business. They're anxious to get their customers back. They're anxious to get money flowing back, right? So there are these creative sidestep actions, and this is why I couched this under creative marketing and why I asked Anna the question. To the best of my knowledge, there's no such thing as clinical disinfection, and there's certainly no such thing as a clinical disinfection certification available to anybody, right? There's nobody that provides that. There are just the guidelines that Anna's been talking about. So pay attention to those things, because this is really where the line starts to blur between what our new normal or the now normal is as we reopen for business, the messages that are being sent to customers. One of the biggest challenges we have now that the rules are being loosened. I can tell you right now, today in Los Angeles and across LA County, there are hordes of people flocking to hiking trails and parks, right? And that is almost certainly inclusive of employees or friends or coworkers. And so you do not know what people's exposure is. Nobody knows what people's exposure is going to be as we begin to recirculate in society and interact with each other, right? So that's another unforeseen challenge. When people come back from the environments they're in right now socially and return to a workplace, a small business, an office, we don't know where they've been. That's why these guidelines are important. So that really is the transition bridge I wanted to use to talk to you all about messaging and why messaging is so important.
And Michael, if I can just jump in real quick, because I think you make a very, very good point. And I think that what Michael said, what Michael just said, I think should be, if you had to have a takeaway, I think that's a good summary of a takeaway that you should have, because that is a, it's a balancing of what's legally required, what is great for your business, and what is best practice. Because I think it's good marketing to have a certification saying, do I think it's a good marketing to have a certification saying that you're completely disinfected? Maybe, right? It's a balance. Legal requirements say, hey, you have to have these like personal hygiene and cleanliness and masks and gloves and all of this stuff, right? At your workplace. So how do you turn that, how do you turn that lemon into a lemonade? You make it, you instead of having a certification from a disinfectant company, which people with common sense are going to say, well, like Michael said, well, that's too much. Like there's no such thing. Are they doing this every minute of the day? No, they're not. People are going to come in and go out of your business, and they're going to reinfect. So how are they doing this? I think a good balance is actually have these signs, right, posted in your workplace that say, hey, we do these things. Or show, because last weekend I was at a coffee shop and the person making my coffee did not have gloves on. And I just felt like, well, I didn't want a side of COVID with my coffee. So I'm not coming back, right? And consumers are going to have that response now. They're going to be much more sensitive to cleanliness at the establishments. So I think a combination of fulfilling the legal requirement, training your employees to wear gloves and masks, and then using that as a marketing tool to put up signs or whatnot to have consumers come to your business to say, hey, they do a great job keeping that place clean. I'm going to go there. So I think that's a very good point.
And as a communications expert dealing with these issues, I could tell all of you, the visual signs are just as important as the verbal and the written signs you post, right? So if you are a small business and you've got workers behind the counter, one wearing a mask, one not wearing a mask, you're sending a very mixed message to your customers, right? Sending a very mixed message to the public about either how seriously or how diligent you are about taking safety and precaution measures. And just to spin the picture out a little bigger, a little further, think about what will happen to any business, right? A small business purveyor who maybe takes this path of, I'm gonna make it seem like I've done everything I can behind the scenes. I'm not gonna ask my employees to wear masks and gloves when serving customers, and I'm just going to go for it and open my doors. If you have an outbreak amongst your own employees, right? What now has happened to your business and your operation? Two things, right? Not just you're going to have to close again, but the perception you've just sent to the community and the customers and the general public that because you made the decisions you did, you're not a reliable, trustworthy business to go visit. So it's going to make it compounds the issues in terms of being able to return to business and operations and profitability, right? So that's why it's so important to consider these things Anna's talking about and how to strike the right balance and certainly the right perception up front. This is where change management is. You are all living case histories right now about what is going to happen, how it's going to impact, and how we're going to be perceived. And for those of us working in large office buildings, these challenges are multiple, right? As Anna said, I know we occupy one of the largest buildings right in the heart of downtown LA, Cal Plaza, for any of you who are familiar of it. Used to be the Water Garden with the outdoor performances. There's a restaurant right below us, which has been closed the whole time. I've been to my office once in 8 weeks. Our security desk, which used to be completely open, now has installed permanent plexiglass screens around it. And the building operations, meaning the operation of entry and exit to the building and operation of the elevators to all floors in the building, is controlled by our building management, not by us. So as Anna said, they're going to be deciding, and they're figuring out right now what is going to happen. I've already heard rumors that half the elevator cars will be in service and a limited number of people will be able to enter a building and enter a car. So instead of having 16 people packed to the walls all riding one car up, there might only be 4 allowed at a time until that car returns to the ground floor again. So things are going to get slower, right? Just the logistics of getting to and from work or to and from an office are going to get slower as we open and begin to reopen. But fortunately, we are reopening slowly, right? We are reopening in stages. We are not going to have hordes, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people returning to the workplace. So we're going to have to see how this goes forward, right? So then the challenge becomes, with all these variables, right? How are you as an employee supposed to understand what you're supposed to do if you're returning to a large employer workplace? How are you as a business owner with maybe 3 or 4 or less than 10 employees going to communicate to your employees? One of the messages AECOM is adopting right now is we have already begun to tell our tens of thousands of employees, the second safest place for you to be other than home should be the office, right? We're not talking about what we're doing. We're not talking about how we're doing it. We are already out the gate trying to reassure our employees that if we reopen and if you come back to a working office space, that office space is going to be as safe as it is for you as it has been at home, right? We're trying to mentally prepare our employees for being comfortable in coming back to work. So think about how that dynamic applies to you in any of your situations. Then on the broader picture of communications, right? You really need to, if you haven't already, while you're at home, working from home, especially if you're a small business, you should have a game plan, just as Anna's described a potential game plan for disinfecting policies and procedures. How do you want to treat your customers coming in and out of your doors? You should have that same game plan on a communications platform with regards to your employees, right? Those of you who work for large employers, your employers, I guarantee you, are already well engaged in what that communications game plan, what information are they going to roll out? When are they going to roll it out? How are they going to roll it out? When are you going to receive it? And what responses are expected from you in order to come back to your large office workspace at some point in time, right? For small businesses, for those of you who still have employees, those employees are important to you. How are you communicating with them, right? Are you talking to them by phone? It's a little easier in a small business setting just because you have fewer employees to communicate to people all at once. This Zoom conference is one way of doing it virtually and safe, right? You don't have to have physical contact, but you can still look everybody in the face and you can still verbally interact with them. But what makes communications easier? And this precedes the new or the now norm, right? What always makes communications easier is having a plan and having a message well defined before you have to communicate, right? Not when you have to communicate. So think about what the core messages are now that you need to hear as an employee or that you need to say as a manager or as a people manager, right? And think about how fast and how fluid things are changing. For those of you in large organizations, those messages are going to flow down from the top. From those of you who are the leader, because you're the small business owner or you are the manager of however many employees you have, you're the decider. of what those messages are. And you've got to take into context all these other things that Anna just talked about. Like, you want your employees to be consistent. You want your employees to understand what actions you're going to take and why you're going to take those actions. Are you going to screen in customers with thermometers before they come into your shop, or before they come? Are you going to just wear masks and gloves inside and let your customers know that you've taken other steps to keep them safe? You need to figure out what all those messages are, right? You need to figure out what makes sense. And remember, this has rolling long-term implications, right? Both your communications and your visual cues provide a message to your audiences about what you're doing. I can tell you one issue that's come up. I work in one of those office spaces that is large scale, open workspace, right? The new model in large scale office space that has taken hold over the last 3 or 4 years. Everybody's out on a floor. There are no barriers. Desks are side by side. Desks are facing each other. And that's the way the office was built. And that's the way it was constructed. It was constructed specifically with the intent, or they will tell you, with the intent to increase collaboration, to increase people's ability to come together and talk openly and freely. And what world do we have now? The complete opposite world, right? Complete opposite world. So our management is trying to figure out physically what to do with that office space, which is why we will not be returning to work in our office space for probably quite some time yet, until it's determined what's going on. And how does that play out with visual cues? Well, let's say this Monday, we allowed a certain number of employees to go back to our open floor place workspace right now. The first thing those employees are going to see are all the extra health and precaution measures that our building management has taken. There's now a sneeze screen up at the security desk for checking in. They're wearing gloves and masks, and then they're going to ride the elevator to our work floors, and they're going to see nothing has changed in the open workspace. Is that going to make them feel comfortable as an employee returning to the workspace? Probably not. Probably not is my guess. So a lot of things, not everything is 100% in any one person's control, right? Either an organization's or a business owner's or people managers' control. But that's why the planning and the communications messaging must be going on right now. These are the things you need to be thinking about right now. If you're with a large employer, you should know what the messaging is that's coming down from the top. You should know what the environmental and disinfection policies and procedures your organization or your company is going to take, so you can reinforce that with the people that you manage. If you are a small business owner, you need to be doing the same thing at your scale, right? Making those decisions and figuring out how to communicate it effectively before you take action, before you open your doors, before you start engaging the public and your customers again.
So I'm going to add to that very briefly, because I don't want us to not have time at the end for questions. But so the way the legal perspective to this in terms of communications and messaging is what's legally required and risk mitigation, right? At the end of the day, you as a business want to have control over the messaging. You don't want someone else out there giving out the messaging that was not intended, right? Because that will open you up for liability. And you know, creating a communications policy and creating openly communicating with your employees will create expectations in your employees about what you are expecting to do at the workplace, what type of behavior you are expecting from your employees, and what the consequences are if they fail to perform a certain way, right? So all of those must be communicated before you take action. So if you don't give some of those notices or disclosures or communications, then you as an employer may be hit with regulatory fines, or you may be in violation, or an employee may sue, right? I mean, there are a lot of layoffs happening right now for various COVID-related reasons, and people are not happy, right? So it's only going to take one misstep, or maybe two, for an employee to say, you know what, I'm going to sue, So then even if you win even if you end up winning ultimately a litigation, you know, you spent the time and money and effort to try to defend it. So you don't want to be in that position, right? So communicating a lot of these things beforehand to create a defensible position for yourself is I think a good idea. Another thing that I see a lot, that's happening a lot, is social media use. So again, this is where controlling the messaging is important. You can't, first of all, I want to put a you know, exception out there. So under the National Labor Board Relations Act, Labor Relations Act, you can't prohibit employees from posting about working conditions because that's considered a protected concerted activity. So leaving those issues aside, I'm not going to touch that. You can't prohibit employees from doing that. But what I'm talking about is having a social media use policy that says, hey, you know what? Don't post things that are, you know, hostile or discriminatory or violent against other fellow employees. Don't post about, you know, like, you know, don't use social media at the workplace. These little things like that will help control the type of messaging that gets sent out. And also in terms of legitimate postings, well, you also don't want an employee posting out there like, my God, my company has done nothing to help protect us from COVID. Look at this dirty bathroom. Like, you don't want that being posted either, right? Which is the reason why I think controlling the messaging, communicating what you're doing at the workplace to your employees is going to go a long way in terms of risk mitigation from regulatory issues as well as lawsuits.
And I'll just wrap, because I know we want to get to Q&A, by following up on Anna's comment with a lesson that comes directly out of crisis and issues management, which is something I do a lot of on behalf of not just my company, but other organizations as well. By nature, this pandemic is a crisis, right? A crisis of epic proportions that nobody has ever seen before. The one thing we know, or the one thing the communications industry knows, or people like me who do what I do know, that is always most effective in a crisis, right? And granted, there are costs involved, right? There are actual dollar costs involved. There are extra time and effort costs involved. But here's what we know works effectively. When you take the most aggressive steps to address a crisis, and think of any crisis you've ever seen in your careers or on the news, right? When that company, that organization, or that person has gone the extra mile to address that crisis, take all the product off the shelf, if it's a matter of poisoning, right? Closing a hospital down and trying to figure out what the problem or the source of infection is if something should happen, right? Closing an area down. Those are the extremes, right? But in your case, as a business or as a small business or as a leader, taking all the steps that you know are proved that Anna went through, CDC guidelines, and maximizing them is the best you can do in a situation, right? That's what you would call, some might call the gold standard, right? Following and implementing all the guidelines, both visually and verbally, and demonstrating that to the public and your customers is one of the best things you can do in the face of a crisis like this, where nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. And, you know, keep in mind, pay attention to the news, not for all the bad news that's reported, but for trends, right? Topics, subject matters that could affect you from a business operations point of view. What do I mean by that? Case in point, and I'll finish with this so we can take questions. There is already strong consensus that we are going to see a relapse of COVID infections come this November and fall, right? What does that mean? That means as a business, if you want to stay open and you want to make money, you should be adhering to the gold standard, whatever that gold standard is for you, in order to continue operating, because there's nothing to say right now that we won't be back in the position we were in 6 weeks ago come November, should the virus start to recirculate, respread, and we see more increased hospitalizations, right? So that's what I mean about looking at news and information for trending, because what are you doing right now? You're preparing yourself for that eventuality to the extent that you can. So I'll just leave you with that thought.
And then my last thought, and I think this is an important point, and I know that we need to go on to questions, but I have to say, if you have that gold standard, put that gold standard in writing as a policy and protocol. I cannot tell you the number of clients who I've spoken to who have said, well, we're dealing with so many issues right now that we're just we have policies and stuff, but it's not written, it's not uniform, but we're just telling employees. That's terrible. Because do you think six months later, where we're starting to see a trend in lawsuits? We know there's going to be COVID-related lawsuits about safety, both from employees and from customers. And do you think 6 months later, or even a year later, when you're in court defending one of these claims, that you can recall, well, I think there was some email that went out? No, that's not the best practice, right? If you have that gold standard practice and you are implementing it, you better have it in writing so that you can point to it and say, nope, this was what we did. This is what every employee was expected to follow. And if they did not follow it, then they were a rogue employee. And, we did everything we can to screen for those employees, but, my God, we had many issues to deal with. And that was that one rogue employee we could not control, and you'll be okay, right? So it's both as a matter of, best practice and as a matter of, defending against potential lawsuits. I think it's very important to have all of these things written down. And I know what some small businesses are going to say, oh, but, we only have like 3 employees. Oh, that's great. Then you'll have a shorter policy. So, but it has to be written down, right? And also, it also establishes consistency. Like Michael said, you want all of your employees to behave a certain way. You don't want them to be that rogue employee. If you have a policy and you say, hey, this is our company policy, even if it's just 2 or 3 pages, then you have something in writing that everyone is following. And then when it comes to enforcing any consequences, such as termination or anything like that, you have something that will back up your decision. So that's why it's very important to have written policies, especially if you have the gold standard, right? Then you should definitely document it for the world to see later on.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Anna. Very, very serious considerations to take note of, and very, practical takeaways for all of our participants to think about. And, I know we're running a little late on time, but I appreciate y'all sticking with us because I understand this is very, very needed information, I believe. And I want to make sure that we give space for the questions that were asked. So Elaine, I know that Anna and Michael kind of dived deep into this after this question was asked. So I just want to pose that. And did they answer your question? Because I think it was given the rules, it may be hard for small businesses to conform, I believe. And what if they don't mandate coming into the office? Do they still need to do this? And sometimes people may want to just come in anyway. So I think that they kind of addressed this, but I wanted to check in with you if you had follow-up after they dive deep into this. Elaine, if you want to pop it in the chat, or do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, they kind of did, but in terms of legal requirements, are they required to still comply if they're telling their employees that don't need to come in, that they're basically saying work from home? So that's one part. And during the course of the discussion, I have a second part as well. Let's say you mandate your employees to work from home. Do you anticipate new policies and legal requirements around now you must reimburse them from home office for internet costs, those type of things? So it's now a 2-part question. If you don't mind addressing it, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and take this. I'll start with the second one. So if you have workers who are working from home, yes, you do in California. I don't know about other states, but in California, you do have to reimburse for expenses. It has to be reasonable, and how you reimburse will depend on your business and what you choose. You can do a flat monthly reimbursement for general expenses like $50 a month, and that includes internet use, right? Even if they already had a home internet, if they're using internet for work, then you do have to reimburse, which is the reason why it may just make sense to do a flat, once a month, monthly stipend, as versus getting down to the nitty gritty of what percentage of your internet usage was for work. And that doesn't really seem to make sense, but it's up to you. So, but the general response is, yes, you do have to reimburse for things like that for people who are staying home from work. In terms of other legal requirements related to, I didn't understand the first part of the question, which is, you said, do you still have to have, follow legal requirements for people if they're staying at home, or do you mean like if people return?
No, it's more of, a small business sometimes will not have enough cash flow to even be able to fund all the new requirements around sanitizing and PPE and all that stuff. So they may switch to a model of saying, you know, just stay home. Everybody's going to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
They'll maybe have an office for 1 or 2 people or a few essential personnel. So if they mandate them to stay at home, do they still have to comply with the sanitizing and all of that stuff? Or if they say 100% of the folks are going to work from home, they may still, but do they have to like comply, even though they may just have an office as kind of a place to store certain things, or maybe only have one person go in, or, you know, I'm not sure what the minimum requirement is of having to clean the office or comply with those requirements.
It's going to be a balance. So if no one is going into the office, then again, it's a workplace safety. So if no one is going to the workplace, then yeah, I guess you don't have to clean it for like 6 months. Although I got to tell you, you're going to have a massive cleaning job when people do return, you know, cobwebs everywhere. But if you do have 1 or 2 employees who still go in to check the mail and things like that, then you should actually keep the workplace clean. Of course, you have to do basic sanitation and cleaning requirements. I think this is where, you know, what I mentioned before, practicality and common sense should come into play. I mean, do you need to wipe down everywhere? Probably not. Just where those workers are, those workstations.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just to round back on expenses as well, I mean, something AECOM does in, I shouldn't say in lieu of expenses, but we ship equipment to employees, right? So that they can work functionally from home. That includes computer screens and monitors, or larger computer screens and monitors. That includes webcams for people using laptops or desktop PCs that are not camera and voice enabled, all kinds of other equipment, laptops in this case. So whatever employees need to be able to perform their job consistently while working from home, we have provided the equipment for them to do that.
Great, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Michael, for chiming in also. I want to give space to our other questions. Leanna, you asked a question for our panelists. Maybe it's teaching small businesses about the reputational risk of visual signs or lack thereof, that is. Did you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for reminding me about that question. So you guys were talking about the coffee incident where the person wasn't wearing the right protection. So it's a question of how do we coach small businesses in the signs, and coming from Texas, where unfortunately not having signs of wearing protection seems to get people to go to your business, but here in California, we're smarter. So is that something that you guys are working on, or is there some guidelines on those kinds of things? I think you guys both have touched upon it, but it'd be good to hear about it again.
I think from I think this is like you pointed out, I think this is going to vary based on jurisdiction, because some states are requiring it and some states are not. They're much more lax. And also you have to read your clientele base. And this is such a terrible news to see these workplace violence with the shootings of employees who are trying to enforce COVID rules. They're just doing their job, right? So, but you have to, you know, so it's unfortunate, but you have to take into consideration your customer base. If your customers are unfortunately the type who will not go well with being enforced on certain, you know, with some of these requirements, then I think you have to take that into consideration and not enforce it on the customers. But you as an employer and enforcing it on your employees, if you have a legal requirement to do so or to keep your workplace safe, then I think that is a good thing. And as a consumer, even if, you know, I may not be told, hey, I may not want to be told, hey, wear masks or gloves. But if I see a worker not wearing it, I think that's going to have a different reaction. So that's what I think.
So again, I'm going to go back to, this is where the line blurs. So business owners are creative and smart people, right? And across Los Angeles, everybody here is very used for, especially businesses that serve food, seeing that A, B, or C in the window, right? And that sends that visual cue without ever asking a question to a customer, is like, do I want to eat here or do I not want to eat here? Business owners know this. So they're getting creative, and the creative they're getting is, wow, if I have a pesticide company come in here and clean my company, and I have that pesticide company give me a letter that says they've cleaned my business, I'm going to slap that up in the window because I know my customers are already conditioned to know if they see something that is somewhat official looking, right? That's going to provide them some greater level of confidence. What I'm arguing and what Anna has covered is you need to create your own gold standard, right? You need to communicate openly and transparently what measures you are taking as a business owner or an operative to adhere, because even the CDC guidelines are only that, they're guidelines. Nobody can force you to do them, right? But what you want to do is reinforce with your customers and with your public that you engage with a consistency and a standard that makes sense for you, right? What you don't want to do, and I'm sure Anna would have something to say about, you don't want to put up some false made up seal of approval saying, you know, some made up company Z has completely clinically and disinfected me, and stick that in your window trying to dupe your customers into believing something. That opens you up to, I'm sure, some other legal risks as well.
Right. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. That's a whole other can of worms that we won't get into. And I think that leads into the next question from Tracy about liability. I think, Anna, this might be for you. Is there less liability if an employee is a rogue employee with a company that has less liability? Does having a gold standard in writing eliminate liability?
So unfortunately, we live in the United States and we live in California for most of us, and where lawsuits are, you know, easy, common, and high, right? We're not living in Europe where filing a lawsuit against the company is difficult. So I can never say that something will eliminate liability. It never does, right? And does it lessen liability? It doesn't. Liability is, you know, what it does is it creates a defensible position for you, so that if you do have a rogue employee who is acting out, and you have proper procedures to catch rogue employees or to implement your procedures, and you have done everything day in and day out to try to implement and execute on the policy that you have, which is a good policy and it's a legal policy, and that one employee has been acting out and you couldn't catch them, then I think that you will have a more defensible position to say you've done everything you can. Right? I mean, I think the law does take into consideration individual human behavior, you know, in an organization. So if your organization was behaving properly and you have rules governing it and you had proper oversight, you know, like your managers were properly trained to catch rogue employees, but somehow one slipped away, I think that will mitigate potential damages. It will mitigate, I guess you can say liability, but I hate to say that it lessens liability, because it's not a matter of lessening liability. It's a matter of you just creating a better defensible position for yourself when you are in court, when you are before a regulator. So I think that's why it's helpful. And having it in writing doesn't eliminate liability. Again, it just simply creates a better defense for you. So you can go in and tell someone, hey, no, that's not right. We did everything that we were supposed to do, and here's the proof. That's what that does.
Thank you for those details, Anna. Very helpful. And last question is from Sam. Are employers required to reimburse costs of PPE like masks and gloves if they ask people to return to the office from telework?
So this is, it's going to be jurisdictional. I hate to keep coming back to this, but everyone is so all over this place with requirements. In California so far, the LA City face covering requirement for essential businesses, employers must provide that. Outside of that, there's no other guidance. So, I don't want to say that you don't have to provide it, or I don't know what's going to come up tomorrow, because as I mentioned, these laws are passed like so regularly. It's sometimes hard to keep track, but as far as I know, in terms of face covering requirements in LA City for essential workers, the employee must provide it. As for other PPE, for others who don't know what PPE is personal protective equipment, and for COVID, that is gloves, mask, smock, and eyewear or face shield. So do you have to provide all of this? It depends, right? If you are requiring an employee to, conduct temperature checks at your work site, and you know, there's no requirement that says you must provide it. I mean, I don't, you know, I'm just making a hypothetical. If there, just because there's no law that says, hey, you don't have to provide any PPE to your temperature taker, are you going to really throw them to the wolves like that? Probably not, right? Because you care about your employees, and that employee's probably not going to do it without the basic, the personal protective equipment, you know, gloves, smock, eyewear, and mask. Otherwise, you're exposing them to a very unsafe situation. So I think this is going to come down to more of a common sense and protecting your employees and creating a safe environment, as versus in looking to any specific laws. I think it'll also vary on the job responsibilities and the safety level of that job.
Thank you, Anna. I really appreciate that. And I know we are over time, but I do want to share the resource. I think, Anna, you mentioned this roadmap earlier. Tracy, you did ask somewhat of a specific question for organizations, and I think the guidelines are in there. I think this was the one you were referring to, Anna. I hope so.
There's so the California Resilience Roadmap is on the California government, the state site. Yeah. Also, Littler Mendelson, that's my law firm. We have been advising clients on this from like, you know, February. So we have an unbelievable amount of resources on our website that's just publicly available to anyone who wants to go to our website. There are certain things that, you know, templates or forms that are at cost, but I think outside of that, we have written tremendous amounts of articles. We have provided so much resources. If anyone wants to just come in and browse through our resources for COVID, related to COVID, I think you should. It doesn't cost you anything, and it will provide you with probably more information that you want to know.
Thank you, Anna, for that. And I am popping in those resources in the chat box for y'all, so you have those links available. You can also download the chat for yourself if you want to do that. So you have the COVID, I did pull that from the California department, or the California website. So there's that. Littler's website that Anna just mentioned, there's that. And AECOM also has a resource that Michael shared with us, so there's that link as well. And here are resources if you want to go ahead and keep in touch with us at AAPA. So I want to make sure we're cognizant of, you know, time. I want to make sure we also give gratitude for Michael and Anna. Thank you so very much for this very engaging, very in-depth conversation and a very practical look at what, you know, businesses are going to have to expect right now and are already seeing. So I do really want to, I'm going to give you a hand of applause because only my sound is on. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to the both of you.
I would add for anybody on this call, if you have follow-up questions that I can address because we couldn't get to everybody, I'm on LinkedIn. Please feel free to email me or reach out on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to do my best to respond to you as best I can.
Yes, and I am also going to, I pop that into the chat, and I also will send a follow-up email with all this information because I know this is a lot. So you'll be getting a follow-up email from me with these resources and how to stay connected. And I just wanted to take just a couple more minutes of your time just to share with you what AAPA is doing as far as our response to the pandemic, right? So I want to share just our website and that we also have created this resource page for y'all. So this is our website. When you go to AAPA, and you can click on the COVID resource page, and it will actually bring you to all the information that we have, our idea talks. So for y'all who are interested in popping into our next idea talks, we have all the topics here for you as well. And the next one coming up is actually next Saturday, where we're going to be talking about new business models. So this is actually a roadmap, right? We're segueing from this conversation right into what this is going to look like. And we have a couple of speakers that are going to share, you know, their practical experience with their new business models. So check in with us next week again with that. And you can view all that information here on our website. We also have the roadmaps for workers, roadmap for employees, and we have a job listing that are actually comprised of listings from our AAPA network. So as I mentioned, we have 3, you know, mentorship programs, actually 3 programs. One of them is a mentorship program. And we have this amazing group of mentors. And I misspoke, sorry, Michael. Michael is actually one of our mentors, not board member. I was thinking mentors, but said board member. So thank you for correcting me, and I apologize for the sorry. tongue-tied. Anyways, Michael is part of this amazing group. And like I said in the beginning, we are still taking registrations. And, you know, though we've lowered the cost, the value is actually increased tremendously because we've launched this new program. We actually have a lot more content, and the mentors that we have are super experienced, just like, you know, Michael showed today. They're going through, you know, this pandemic with us, and they're bringing in, you know, these new creative ways of thinking, these new ways to communicate, right? And bringing this now norm that we are seeing. So this is a good way to keep connected with us, to be part of the mentorship program, and to get the guidance from people like Michael. And Liana is also our mentor. So we have a lot of mentors with this knowledge, right? And a good way is to plug into our mentorship program. And you can, you know, do that by going here on our website, mentorship program, and it'll bring you all the information and how to register. So there's Michael right there, right on our mentorship page. And how to register here. So I just want to take a couple minutes to share that with y'all because I believe it's very, very important. And we're going to be sharing just a couple more idea talks, and then we're going to segue right into our mentorship program for the year. So yeah, that is how you stay connected with us. And just thank you so much for being present with us today. And thank you for giving us the time and the space to share this information with you. I know we greatly, greatly appreciate it. And this is part of us, you know, responding to the pandemic, right? And I do have a feedback form, which I will put in an email to you because right now there's a lot of stuff in the chat. We're running late, so I want to be appreciative of your time. And it is a beautiful day in Southern California. So if you are here with us, please go outside for a walk, soak in some of that vitamin D, you know, before we get congested again with all these phases rolling in. So again, I'm Karen with AAPA. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Thank you so very much for being present with us today. And thank you everyone in the chat. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Brian. Thanks everyone. Thank you to
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.